response, that's typically what happens, is you kind of get to the level of customer service is greatly enhanced because now you know you've got a single point, you know when it came in, you know it got back, how it's done.
So we almost need another bullet that is, items of day-to-day management of the city, that come to the council should be forwarded to the EA for proper distribution to staff, something along those lines. Would that be appropriate?
Chris? Is that a?
Because then we have the ability to forward or call.
I guess Cheryl, since you've been here, I mean, have you ran into significant issues with this, other than me sending an email to Dave directly last week? But, I mean, no, has this been a problem? I mean, I guess what I'm looking for is what we're doing today, or have been doing, I guess, in the past 3 or 4 months, does that meet your expectations?
We have,
Go ahead.
there are requests for, review of things that typically would not go to staff that have gone to staff, because they involve funding, they involve assessment, they involve, kind of an evaluation, some prioritization. So we have some of those. Sometimes it's very hard to really understand the larger implications of what the request is. It seems like a very small request, but when you think about what it would take to really implement, it's far broader than the simple request that came in. And we have, so we have had some of those.
Okay.
And we don't want to, we don't want to pigeon or, paint ourselves into a corner either.
Right.
For the next, group that comes thereafter.
I don't know,
Well, I think my opinion's out there. If the consensus is to go with the document as written, that's fine by me. That is one council member's observation.
What's your opinion of the EA part that Cheryl spoke to, Chris?
Well, I think that if that's the way that the information is going to flow after we get a new executive system in place. I mean, the email's still going to Cheryl's email, and the EA just picks it up and distributes it. I don't know that it needs to be addressed in the document.
Okay, all right, just making sure.
So do we have is there any, am I on an island by myself on this one, or is there?
You're with Larry now.
I like this one here. The mayor can prevent the misuse of motions or establish procedure, the abuse of privileges, or obstruction of the business of the city council.
Page?
Oh, I'm on on page 3, under duties of the mayor.
backing up.
I guess my point is, these are all subjective rules that really have no place in a city council, if you ask me, especially since we already have rules in place called Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, what is I mean, misuse of motions, what does that mean? Is that one motion that someone makes that you, as opposed
Well, for
to what
example,
you think?
I was in my first work session months ago, and quite frankly, I forgot it was a work session, and I made a motion, and I believe the mayor reminded me that this is a work session and the motion wasn't necessary. And
That's the misuse of a motion, I mean.
Yeah.
no, absolutely. I mean, if you want to talk about Robert's Rules of Orders, which I'm not a pro in, but I've got a pretty good working knowledge of. I mean, that's part of that management, if you will, of any meeting based on motions in this example.
I don't think that's what it's referring to.
Well, another example could be, if you were to bring a motion to the table and it were to be voted down, to ask to have that motion, the exact same motion brought to the table during the next meeting in the hopes that the vote would change or to grandstand upon that. That would be a misuse of a motion.
I mean, Larry, do you agree, somebody has to run the meeting?
Well, we already have that being done without another, you know, recipe for things that we're gonna have to look at now and say, well, wait a second. I mean, this is gonna come back and be used in a manner that does not allow the free flow of information. I mean, it's already been done that way, but now you've codified it. Really, I mean, you.
Well, if we're
Yeah.
adopting it as resolution, it's not being codified.
Right.
And somebody does have to run the meeting, although, you know, if we wanted to put something about, on that bullet point that also says, subject to an appeal by any member to the
Parliamentarian.
we could put that on there.
I think that's a fair addition.
That's a good, that's all.
Subject
Here, here.
appeal by any member.
That's on, section D, and I think it was the next to the last bullet point, Lori.
Yeah, 6 bullet point, stage 3.
So as far as chapter 3, section C, is anybody with me on that, or is everybody happy with the way it is?
I'm content with the way it's
I'm fine with
expressed here.
it too. I mean, I'm fine
Okay.
with it.
Larry?
I still think it applies to meetings to begin with, and not, because the very first bullet says speak to the city administrator, not email or converse or any other way. So, I mean, to me, again, it's more words confusing a convention that's already being followed by most people that I know of. So I think you're taking something that is, you know, rationally derived and now changing it into rules that we are gonna be using against us later. So I'm not in favor of any of it. I think we have one rule that's been on the books that has not been followed. If you want to remove that rule and start over and say, you know, how do we run the meetings, then that's fine. But right now, you've got two conflicting things. And
Well,
we don't even agree that conduct of city administrative and staff applies to, you know, emails. Right now, it just says speak to the city
We
administrator.
change that to communicate with.
And also, in fairness to that, Robert's Rules of Order, I don't believe would even apply to tonight's meeting, whereas this
That's
rule
right.
of context.
So,
But this,
misuse
but
of
this,
motion wouldn't matter.
but this code actually communicates to our total code of conduct, to how we will communicate with staff, and define some things that aren't defined by rules of order that
Not
are in place right
necessarily
now.
in meetings.
Right, absolutely.
Although I will say, in this chapter 3, we talked once before about city council, and we need to change it to governing body, but I guess that applies to each of the, you know, A, C, D, E, F, G, so on.
Yeah,
So-
well, we're gonna have to be careful, because we talk about policy decisions. It's really not a governing body policy decision, in that case, it would be a council, so I
Where are
think,
we at?
I mean, I'm just going through your conduct, the city with staff, right?
Right.
And if we don't necessarily wanna do a find and replace of governing body,
Throughout the
of city
document.
council with governing body, because, for example, in the third bullet under conduct is direct the city administrator to implement city council's policy decisions. The mayor really doesn't decide, so it really is city, in that particular case, it really is city council.
Voters.
Right.
I think maybe it's safe to say the headline, where it says city council shall, city council members shall. I mean, it's
Right.
safe to say governing body in those,
Right.
because that's everybody.
So
But, yeah, and in that particular case, that bullet point can remain saying city council.
Right.
I think that covers it.
So going back to the second bullet and under C, I mean, says you can't direct staff to initiate the action that is significant in nature. What does that mean? And again, if we have to have a approval of the majority of the city council, we really, by these rules, can't ask for instance, all the invoices from the city attorney. That means that's a report that has not been questioned or approved by.
But it's also a simple, I understand you're
I mean, it's
arguing who judges
Yeah, that's
that,
not
but
significant.